As a highly successful veteran real estate investor, Ginger Crystal Faith wears several hats right across the entire real estate profession. As a licensed broker, a realtor, a builder, a CEO, founder, look, the list goes on. And she has been involved as an investor in commercial, residential, short term, long term, fix and flip, buy and hold, in state, out of state, you name it. Listen, she's made the rounds on the top media, on HGTV, Yahoo Finance, Fox, NBC, CBS, and others, just to name a few. And few people have a strong feel for the pulse of the market than Ginger. And today we're going to hear more from Ginger with her expertly qualified and unique perspectives about real estate and investing. So Ginger, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I was, first of all, just to start, I was listening to where your early years, you're bouncing between West Coast, East Coast. I think maybe your father on the West, I think your mother going towards the East Coast. And there were some issues at that young childhood. So I wondered, like, if you could start maybe just giving a brief, very brief explanation of how these early important relations like maybe have affected you at a very young age, especially as a teenager.
Well, as a teenager, I realized I really couldn't rely on my parents. So just, and I think there's some people who can relate to that. They tried their best, but it wasn't, I just couldn't rely on them. So I was really lucky because I was somebody who was an avid learner. That's a genetic thing. I was a reader. As soon as I could open a book, I was trying to read. And so when I remember my early memories are about reading books, learning, going to other places, going places other than where I was living, going to worlds outside of me. And that really helped me tremendously. So I've read well over 1,000 books on personal development, marketing, business. I'm just an avid reader. So I was always like learning, figure. My parents didn't really know how, my dad wasn't around much, and they really didn't know, we were different from each other. And I didn't think that they really knew how this life worked. And so I figured somebody did. So I was always asking questions and I was always reading books to try to figure it out. And so that's what formed me, that need for something different, for something better than what I was seeing around me.
And how old were you, Ginger, when you started to break away? Like just from being kind of more dependent on parents, etc., and you really started getting into books and self-development and all that jazz. Like what kind of age are we talking about here?
But books, I remember 8 years old, reading a lot, like reading a lot. And then I joined a church my mother directed me to, which was it's good and bad. It was very controlling, very overbearing, but it gave me some structure and it got me out of her philosophy of life, which was not very valuable. By the time I was 16, I moved out, but to a church member's house. And so a safe place, a better place than where I was. And so I remember listening to Earl Nightingale, like when I was 16. And then by the time I was around 20, Tony Robbins came into my life in audio cassettes and some business books. Started when I was in my early 20s.
So you feel kind of like the self-education then really helped enormously, and that was kind of part of where you became the independence, and I guess also, freeing yourself from the childhood. And I guess, would you feel like on the religious side that helped you as well? Like, or is it common, like what helped more? Was it the books? Was it the religion? Was it something completely else? Was it genetic? What was the big drive?
Yeah, these are awesome questions. They're so deep and great. A lot of it was genetic. It was very strange because my core friends, the religion, like I said, was extremely controlling, and it stripped me of things that I really wish I had been able to capture. I was not able to have a university education because it wasn't allowed. You had to serve the kingdom. And that was it. I wasn't able to participate in group sports because that was not allowed. So there were a lot of things that it took from me, but it gave me some structure and right and wrong, outside my mother, which she didn't have any sense of right and wrong. But what I noticed was very strange is I naturally hung out with the class valedictorians. my age, senior, and it didn't happen like I was seeking them out. We would just have a lot of things to talk about, and they happened to be the valedictorians. One of them went to Stanford, Harvard, Tufts, and they were like MIT, and they were my good friends. But I couldn't get my grades quite to their level. I didn't have the academics. My academics were good, but not that with all of the extracurricular activities, which were not allowed, and I wasn't able to go to college. So it was a strange little dichotomy in my whole brain. I'm here in this socioeconomic world, but I'm hanging around with people who are much more broad thinking, and I gravitated toward them naturally, and we got along great. We did things together on the slide because it was like not allowed in the church for me to be with these people who are worldly. But it was interesting, and I learned about myself, like where is my orientation? It's not with the people my mother hung around with. I couldn't relate to those people on any level. The church was my safety blanket, apart from my mother, and then these other people were my natural orientations. So because I was not allowed to go to college, I ended up reading as I normally do, and I ended up going into business early, and then reading and started going into real estate because the need and the hunger to grow out of my situation was very, very strong. There were some very big challenges because I was still in a unhealthy environment that I had to grow through. And I had to, so on one hand, I would be buying apartment buildings. On the other hand, I married the wrong guy who was not good for me. So my 20s were a big, big challenge. But that tenacity, just keep going, and keep reading and keep listening to Tony Robbins. And so eventually I came to very strong ways of how this life works, and I'm still learning. Today I was reading a fabulous book, Necessary Endings by Henry Cloud, which I wish I'd read 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So all of these dynamics were very powerful and internally. That I grappled with strongly in my 20s, but slowly you just start learning about yourself, and you start stair stepping, and you slide back and you get back up and you keep going, and my life now is really good. But it was a hard one.
It sounds like it's like the confidence that you had, because it's difficult to surround yourself with people who maybe, like, sort of, some people, they have the green, the envy, the jealousy. They look at people that are doing really well, like these valedictorians and such, and they kind of feel, oh, I look inward. But for you, it sounds like, how can I be like this, or how can I grow? So, that was very good. And of course, we're the average of the five people who are hanging around, so it's probably very good that you were trying to reach out to these upper circles. I can relate. And I mean, in terms of now, of course, now today, you've become a very competent professional business person. So, as the years go by, could you just give us a brief picture of your journey? I know you were doing, I think it was floral stuff, business, and with the flowers, and maybe even window cleaning or something like that. I'm not sure if that was someone else before you got into your first sixplex.
It's all accurate. So again, it was like just going by your intuition, and the environment around me. Like nobody was really an entrepreneur. Like a couple people that I didn't really know very well, but again, books. So I was a teenager in high school, and I just started looking at, okay, maybe I can do window cleaning, and because I did know somebody who did that, and I was like, oh, I'm making $100 an hour window cleaning these businesses. So I started that, and then the winter's really cold in New England where I was living, so I was like, oh, this is rough to do. And so I read a book by Entrepreneur Magazine, and it was called 365 Businesses Anyone Can Start and Make a Lot of Money. And so I started reading it, like, oh, which one can I start? At the time, I was still very committed to the church, so I wanted to have a full-time income, part-time work, because I was working so much between the ministry service that I was working, and the window cleaning, and I was waitressing, and all of that stuff. So I was like, how can I make it easier for myself so I can devote myself more to the ministry? So I found a business, and I had got some girls, and what we did was we donned tuxedos and went to nightclubs at night and sold flowers, roses to the guys for the girls. And it was so much fun. And it got me out of the churchy, culty type of mentality. It was like everybody on the outside is evil. And so you have to stay with us and stay safe, even though it was dysfunctional. So it got me out into the world, and everybody was so nice to me. And it was so much fun, and I made so much money. We ended up going to like 50 places a night, in 3 different cities, and had so much fun and met so many nice people. It kind of started shattering the paradigms around what they were teaching me about, that we're the only ones that are okay. And it was very powerful for me, not only to make really good money. I made very good money very quickly in part-time work. And then as I started making money, I said, what am I going to do with this money? Because I didn't know what to do with it. And so then now I started reading about real estate. And I got Robert Allen's book, Nothing Down. And that's how that started. I ended up buying my first 6-family, old Victorian, 1880 something house in a great neighborhood that was run down. Totally, like, I didn't have a formula. I was just cheap. And I liked the house because it was cool and funky. And I'm like, I can do something with this. And so I thought it had a good structure. I liked the Victorian style. So I ended up buying it, and then as soon as I painted the outside, I had people lining up, handing me applications. They wanted to come in, and even before the inside was fixed. And they said, "Oh, we'll fix it. We'll fix it. Just give us some paint, give us some spackle." So I would have the tenants just moving in, doing their own work. It was crazy when I think of it now. But it was just all like gut feel, and just I did find that by the books, having imagination, I had the freedom to think my own thoughts, which was a struggle because they told me I had to think their thoughts. And so I was considered somebody who was self-willed, always being called on the carpet by the church elders for doing something wrong, because they, what is she doing now? What's she doing? Now she's buying apartment buildings, and now she's doing, starting this, she's going into these nightclubs, but they couldn't say anything I was doing like wrong, but they just kept calling me on the carpet.
It almost sounds like necessity. Was it like when you started making all this money from the floral business that it was like, what do I do with it? Was that kind of like, I guess, what attracted you? That first painted lady Victorian building, like what attracted you towards investment? Was there some special quality that you felt like you had a strength, or you were kind of discovering what that was? People, money, analysis, etc.
I had no particular strength, curiosity, and the boldness that comes with ignorance was my strength. Not knowing. I still had a lot of loyalty to the ministry, and I thought, well, if I can buy enough real estate, I can have, I can have the income, and then I can devote myself to the ministry. But then as I started getting stronger and time started marching on, and I bought, a 6-family, then a 9, and I started getting stronger emotionally and more aware and more educated. I started recognizing that and a lot more Tony Robbins actually. I started recognizing that the environment was quite toxic in that church, and I started understanding that because when you're, I joined when I was a child, and so with my mom, and so you don't know it, that Stephen Covey says fish see water last, right? You don't know the environment you're in until you start seeing other representations of how life could be, which they tried to keep me from. And so all of my rebelliousness, ended up breaking me free from what I originally decided that I wanted to devote my life to, because I found it to be healthier outside. And so I do give a lot of credit to Tony Robbins, but he wasn't the only thing. He has that beautiful energy that helps you to like wake up and think. But there was a lot of a long number of years of growth and therapy and coaches and NLP and like all sorts of stuff. A ton of work I did. Starting when I was around 30, I ended up leaving because I couldn't be there anymore, and I couldn't be with my husband anymore. We were not compatible. I married too young. We were definitely not compatible, but I was staying there because that's what you're supposed to do. When you get married, you're married for life, right? So, but I couldn't do it anymore, and left when I was 30, and then I went into a deep, deep, wonderful adventure for the next 5 years. And luckily, and I always say this, luckily I had the rentals at that point, bringing money in. I had my part-time business bringing good money in. And I literally I had structured my life so that on the weekends I would tend to my properties and my business, going back to the nightclubs and whatever. And then I would go 45 minutes away to a really neat little suburb in Boston. And I would, walk on the grass, and I would read, and I would go to classes, things I couldn't do before. And go to the gym every day. And I just started devoting myself to healing and understanding what I was involved with, and just trying to get spiritual healing. And those were 5 powerful, amazing years. Very difficult, to basically, I had to unpack every single thought and belief that I had and look at it and decide if it's something that was useful, helpful, healing, true, is it true? Is it, was I being brainwashed? What was, there was a level of brainwashing for sure that I had to renegotiate. But it was the business that I had and the property that I had gave me that flexibility that I didn't have to go to a 9 to 5 job every day. I could wake up in the morning and go to the gym and read and study. And literally, that was probably my college education. It was 5 years, but I did it according to what I needed. And it was like I would go to the bookstore and look around, like, what do I need to learn, and it was a very, very amazing, magical time. I spent a month in Colorado, Winter Park, and I took an NLP master class and learned about that, because NLP had a profound, pivotal influence on my leaving. I had done the NLP timeline regression, and it woke my brain, my subconscious went, whoop, I know it, it literally helped me to leave the cult like right then. It was amazing. So, so that was.
It's brilliant. I NLP was part of my life too, so I understand how you kind of breaking these limiting mindsets and things like this. It's and that 5 year period for you, it seems like, because I was kind of trying to draw out, like, where was it? Where did the resilience come from? Was it earlier? Because, you think about someone like Andrew Carnegie, who's one of the richest people of all time. If he was around today, he'd be over 300 billion, and he was a Scottish industrialist. And he said, he came from abject poverty himself, and he said that actually sometimes it can be a blessing in disguise. That, like, sometimes when you start, like, there's a drive or a fire in you. Because I wonder, like, when you were growing up, even with the valedictorians or even later on, was there ever a bitterness that you looked at other people, or was it more like, okay, they may have had an easier road, but how can I get there? Like, how did you reconcile that when you saw others may have been given the silver spoon, but you had to work for, and you succeeded so well at every single step. How did you reconcile that when you met these people that came into your circle?
Yeah, truthfully, I just, what can I learn? It was always, what can I learn? Like, there's something I don't know, and I'm still that way today. There's something I don't know. There's something I need to know that I don't know, that was the truth of it. There was something I needed to know, and there's something I needed to learn, and it might have been my Tony Robbins, or it might be just the fact that I'm a reader, that I just connected to that. But no, I was never, I think sometimes, I'll get a little, if it's like a big, I'll have a little bit like, I'll never get like that to that level, but that's okay. That's okay. The truth is, everybody's got, that there are levels to everything on the planet. There's so much variety, right? So when we start comparing ourselves to other, it makes me laugh. So I think, so somebody says, oh, I should look like Christy Brinkley, and I should have the money of Bates, or or I should, whatever, have the athletic ability of Tom Brady. Well, what if you had, the looks of Bates, and the like, everybody's got, like, their one talent, and then sometimes people will compare themselves to the best of the best in that one area, but we're all a mixed bag. And so why don't we compare ourselves to the worst part of something? There's some Hollywood actors who are an emotional wreck, but we don't compare ourselves to that. We look at the money and then the fame and the, and that, right. But there, do we say, oh, I could be emotional wreck like that person, right? So, so we're just silly by, there are hippopotamuses in nature. Hippopotamus, is that a right word? And then butterflies.
And today we're comparing all the time. It's like with the Instagram world and
It's silly, yeah.
and it's I guess there was for you it seems like there's the spiritual side, there's a book side. I'm wondering with these strategies that you've used, NLP, etc. What are some of the best strategies that you've found that have really helped you advance in your life from all this learning that you did in your 20s and 30s?
The best my goodness. I mean, I'm just learning one now from the book, Necessary Endings. There's a ton of strategies. I'm like, oh, man, I wish I had known this before. So there's strategies I'm learning right now, just this morning when I was doing my reading. Globally, people, connecting to people, loving people, believing in yourself. Affirmations have been very powerful for me. Positive affirmations have been extraordinary. Louise Hay was a huge influence on me early in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so every morning, almost every morning, but it depends on how much I need it. I was just telling you I was on my way to the gym when I realized that we have the podcast today, but I have my affirmation book. And I put on the treadmill, I open up my affirmation book. So whatever I'm dealing with right now, whatever I'm negotiating, whether it be my own vulnerability or weakness that I want to overcome, or if it's a bigger goal that I want to achieve, I put it down in a positive way in the book. And I brainwash myself into what I want to accomplish. So I would say, connecting with people who are more successful than me deliberately has been a great gift. And then just doing my absolute best continually in helping and serving others. In real estate, I love serving people. I love helping people. I think Earl Nightingale was an enormous influence on me early on, and he's an intellectual, a reader, he was. And I learned that taking care of myself and serving others, filling up my cup to overflowing, making sure my thinking is accurate. When I say accurate, based on reality to the best that I can. And just really focusing on doing the best that I can. I wish I could get you something more tangible than that, but I think that definitely positive affirmations have been very powerful for me. It was pivotal back in the 90s. There was a book called The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, phenomenal book. And I literally made a tape of all of the prayers that he would do affirmative prayer. I think affirmative prayer is enormous. That's extremely powerful. Science of mind, Church of Religious Science, they talk about that. Not Scientology, different. Definitely not that. But affirmative prayer. So when you're praying, don't pray like, "Oh God, please help me." Say, "God, I know you're helping me with this. I know that the power of all of the universe is in, through, and as me, surrounding me and speaking and working through me today. And I know that what I am doing today is divinely guided, and I will be listening for your guidance." And so that kind of thinking, I reprogram myself to have that kind of affirmative thinking. And I used to listen to that over and over again. I remember waking up in the morning many, many years ago, just after I left that church, and I started into therapy, and I recognized that all of my thoughts were negative. Even though I was doing all these great things, there was a voice inside me that was destroying what I was building. So it was always, I was always fighting internally, not recognizing it. But once I went into therapy, I recognized it. And once I saw the NLP, did all that, I recognized it. And so I realized that, I've got to control that voice and get that away. That no longer has a place in my life. It's got to go. And so I reprogrammed, and then I would do tons of writing exercises where I acknowledge when I had a negative thought, I would write it down. So I would look at it on a piece of paper. Like, do I want to believe that? No, I don't want to believe that. So that's got to go. That's got to go. That's got to go. So it's been a lot. There's been a lot of different things, but I'd say probably, I think it comes down to this in the emotional spiritual realm for me. In all of the work that I've done, and it's been a ton, is that our consciousness is like I would say a bucket of water. And if somebody has thrown arsenic in the water and mud and heavy metal poisoning, like whatever, right?
Touch wood.
Right. Yeah. It's our responsibility to get rid of it because the goal is to have clean, fresh consciousness, clean, fresh water. That's how I believe. And my goal is to have a clean line between me and my higher self, and God, and something bigger and better. That's my absolute commitment to my life. That means the best health I can get, the best, energy that I can get, the best consciousness that I can get. And then cleaning out the thoughts, the beliefs, in anything that takes me away from that, so that my consciousness is a clean bucket of water. Simple, right? So you put in the good, you get rid of the bad. That's simple. However you do that, whatever the strategies are. For me, is acknowledge and now I've got like the sensor in my mind that's very, very in tune. When I hear a negative thought come in, I literally hear, I'll mentally be stop. Like I literally do this in my head. And like, because I can feel it. I can feel the energy. I'm so sensitive now. It's like, it's weird, but it's awesome, right? So I can feel it like, oh, this is like not a good feeling. And so I kill it. And then I replace it with something. And then my life works. It works. My life works now, and I'm grateful for that.
It's amazing to have that awareness, and I think a lot of it is when you write stuff down. I know that when you write goals down, they become reality, like in a sense.
Yeah.
You're not even aware of what you're thinking until you start writing down, like, what are you thinking? Why are you thinking that? Oh, wait a second, like this is not the right way to think, and this is, you can kind of almost answer like, oh, this is the reason why I think, oh, but this is a better answer that contradicts that, and it's a positive. So just to shift gears a little bit, and just in terms of your time, I wondered, could you give us just a brief picture now of like your history? I know you went through the full gamut with all the 2000s with the whole finance and flipping and doing everything under the book. But just to kind of go from, all right, you've had a few in the 90s, some of these are sixplexes, nineplexes, but when you really got into real estate and you started wearing all these different hats, if you give us the audience just kind of like an accelerated, like the last, say, 2 decades, like what would be a kind of a trailer for those that would love to learn more?
Moved to California in 2001, right into the mortgage crazies, which was great. Got a mortgage broker license, CFL license right away, which everybody told me you couldn't just go in and get the you couldn't get a mortgage broker license, but I learned how. I took a class and I found out I could. Got the mortgage broker license. I started turning mortgages right away between '01 and '08, '07, something like that. I processed and originated and connected to about 500 different families that I helped them to get a mortgage. And then the market turned. And now people are coming back to me saying, I just lost my job. I'm getting a divorce, all this stuff. What do I do with this mortgage? And we can't sell the house. 2005, I had my real estate broker license as well. I got that. And then so I started looking. At first I had no answers. We tried to do loan modifications. The banks weren't playing ball. Very difficult. And then so eventually we started doing short sales. It was at that time that the REO market was open up. And at that point, the cheap person that I am, I went back and I'm like, oh, now you can afford these houses and they'll cash flow. So I started buying rentals, starting in '09. And I didn't buy enough, but I bought a few. Not enough, but I bought a few. But I started flipping properties at that time and buying rentals. And then I burned out in around 2014, and I thought that day trading would be better. It was not. I got back into the business in 2018 and started flipping more properties and helping old clients that I had relationships with And so I've been doing that. And my last flip, and I took a break when the market, because of uncertainty, and some people continue doing it, and that's great. But when the rates like tripled, or more than doubled, right before that I sold my last flip, and we bought it for 2 million. We put in 1.25, and we sold it for 4.8, and that was the last flip I did. Since then, in the last year and a half, I've been studying with the Commercial Academy, which I happen to have this shirt on. I didn't expect, because I was on my way to the gym. But the J. Scott Commercial Academy is phenomenal. And as of this week, I just worked with my girlfriend Lily and her husband and a few investors, and we bought an amazing building in Sacramento, a 30,000 square foot, used to be the Regis building. And we got it for 2013 prices, with millions of dollars of upgrades. That was lost to the bank, and it's cash flow negative at 40% occupancy, and we're excited about that. So that's like, as of right now, that's like, so there you go. That's the kind of the whole
Wow.
timeline. Yeah.
Congratulations. That I'm so happy for you for that last part, the commercial. That's amazing. That's amazing. And tell me, Ginger, what is it that you love the most about real estate? Like, is it working with people? Is it the competence, or?
Well, there's that people, and mastering something. Yeah, so definitely people, helping people. I'm like a golden retriever. Like, just, I just love helping people. So like recently I had a privilege, really a privilege, of helping this beautiful young couple. They were the nicest people to get in the house in West Dublin, which was so hard to get into, and that was super fun. That's neat. Another one of my dearest friends found the love of his life and sold his house, and I was able to sell that for him, and just helping with life transitions because they're so big. That's kind of like, that's the heartwarming part. But then there's this other part, like, for example, my friend Lily, we're reviewing leases, and on these commercial buildings. So I'm learning a lot, about every time you read a lease, you're reading about a specific type of business, and what's that about, right? That's kind of interesting. But I laughed a minute ago because I think the thing that I really like a lot is when I am lazy and I don't want to learn something, and I force myself to learn something, and then it becomes easier, and then I have an aha moment. And that's what happened with commercial a year and a half ago when I started with the Commercial Academy. We have these weekly meetings on Zoom, and literally the first day I sat the Zoom meeting, and they're talking about this industrial park and all the numbers and the cap rates and this and that, and I was like, I just want to go take a nap. And then I was like, don't do that, you lazy thing. Stay here, just stay and pay attention, and I forced myself. And now I look forward to the Zoom meetings. I'm like, I look forward to seeing my friends, and we talk about, now I understand I don't understand everything, like these people have been doing it for 20 years, but. And then this week I met with somebody who's worth a ton of money, millions and millions of dollars. And he and I did a Zoom meeting on a particular property I was analyzing. And in 10 minutes, he told me something I think I would have looked at it for 3 hours, and I would have noticed how, I'm like, oh my God, you just saved my butt, So I love that. That like juices me. And I think that the other thing is I love connecting great people. So anytime I can be the connector, that makes me really happy. I love to be able to connect people that can, something good can happen when I connect this person who has a great skill set in a dimension, and then another person who has another skill set, and they can do something together, maybe do a deal together or have a great friendship. And I love that. That's really fun.
It's interesting that you mentioned learning, because that I guess, kind of coming back, that's my specialties. I love learning as well, for obvious reasons, as an academic. And I remember, for me, it was always about the kind of analysis. Like the trading was what really actually took me up first. I really enjoyed trading, And then I thought, well, if you can accelerate this with the leverage that real estate provides, and the Airbnb model, etc., and as you start to scale into bigger and bigger things. And funny enough, when I got into the fix and flips, it was a lot of women actually that were doing. They were the big hitters in this area. Like when I would work with my team, they'd be like, oh, I just did a flip for. Like they would be the builders. They'd be, oh, I just did a flip for this woman, and it was like a 2 million flip or a 4 million flip, and they were putting the kind of numbers you're talking about, like $1 million into a property, then making another million or something like that on top of it.
They know how to decorate.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the interior
Yeah, I can
design.
always tell when a man's done it without a woman's touch. I'm like, oh man,
That's
this is
it.
a mess.
All one monochrome color, dark. That's it. Yeah. And tell me, when you moved into this kind of commercial, because that's where I'm at right now, is that you kind of, I guess, multi and making the leap of faith, because I was doing the numbers game, and actually my most recent one, I had all the health issues from my last renovation. It kind of turned me off the quantity game, which I was thinking of the single family small multi, where there's some statistic out there about 89% of the people buying it are basically parents that they're not really investors. So there's a lot of arbitrage profit opportunities. But once you get into the commercial, does the scale, does the responsibility scare you a little bit, or where do you get the courage from to make that leap? Do you ever worry about the failure, like the dips in the market, or maybe even your own health? Like when you're going into something really big, you have to be able to carry it over the line, the finish line, so to speak. Like, do you have a team?
Absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah. Yeah, my courage is only right now because of the group that I'm with. And I know, I mean, like the woman, my friend Lily, she's an extraordinary underwriter. She's just unbelievable. And so she and I were we were on a Zoom call yesterday, and she was like, this is how I think about analyzing this deal. This is my thinking on this. And I was like, whoa, I wouldn't have thought of it this way. And so I'm excited about learning how she thinks about underwriting. And she's involved directly with this deal in Sacramento. And so I know, I told her the other day, look, I'm very competent, and even though she was the spearhead of this deal, I'm like, I'm here for, whatever you want me to do to help out. And she's like, absolutely. And she knows, and she doesn't mind teaching me what she knows. She's already done this for 6 years. They bought 8 centers, big centers. I think their biggest one is like 140,000 square feet, which is great. Right, her and her husband, and they work with other investors. So being with this group, they take down $1 billion a quarter in commercial distressed assets. So having this group, and then like I said, this other guy, he figured out in 10 minutes what I wasn't able to figure out. Like, whoa, but now I know. I know. It was a really important, critical piece that I'll be looking for when I'm looking for another deal. So they give me the courage to go forward. I would never do this alone. Never do this alone. It's just there's too many sharks. There's too many hidden landmines, and people get really, really in trouble if they just try to do commercial by themselves. So
It's a team sport. It sounds like, as I know you've got like people like Ken McElroy talks about this, who's the Robert Kiyosaki's, and I know John J. Shield and others like Manny Kabash. They all have teams. It seems like it's all people, relations. I remember getting scammed when I read your scamming stuff about like how people are scamming as well. I was like, oof, there's so, because you kind of go into it kind of trusting, and you're like, oh, like if you do well with some people, you almost then don't take the checks, like whether it's the underwriting, the bonding, not just the references, but going beyond that. There's a lot of things you got to watch out for.
right. It's great to have a friend partner who's like completely paranoid, and that's how you have to be in this context, right? In this context, and then you need also the people who are rah rah rah, go go go. You have to have those people, because otherwise the completely paranoid will just stay stuck. So you need to have the rah rah, push push, go go go. Everything's going to be rosy. That's awesome. Then you acquire a deal, and then you flip on the hat, the hat of like, okay, where's the landmine, and how am I going to figure out that landmine as soon as I close on this deal? What's going to blow up in my face? And that's the hat you absolutely have to put on. And then, and my friend's like that. She's like, no. And I was like, whoa, this is extraordinary. And that's how you get incredible deals. And you're willing to just say no, 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 no to the ones that don't fit the model of what you need to have. and I love it when she said, made everybody laugh because we were in a big group of a couple hundred people, and you have all these men who are very, bravado, ego. I got this, and I'm building a skyscraper, and I'm developing a whole nation, and like I'm exaggerating, but and she stands up and she said, "I have zero risk tolerance." Zero, and everybody starts laughing because everybody else is like, well, and she's like, I have zero risk tolerance. But you look at her track record; it's phenomenal. She's got all wins, not easy wins, but wins,
So actually, Ginger, just to segue on that, because I promised my college students, especially the females, I'd ask you this question, because I heard like you're throwing some statistic around, like it used to be like 2%, now it's 3% of commercial investors are female, and half of that is inherited. My question is, have you noticed or either thought or felt, has there been a difference since you started investing in terms of the environment, maybe for the residential side, for the commercial?
Yeah, well, with education, right? So starting with the technology boom, and then now with YouTube, and then with podcasts, there's education. And there's a need for women to be more powerful. There's an actual need, right? So everything's many things are changing. The dynamics are changing. We don't have the Leave It to Beaver family anymore. It's just not happening. And many women are stepping up to the plate, and they have to take care of their family. They have to take care of themselves because the men aren't doing it for them, like traditionally thought. Now, the most powerful teams are husband and wife teams, very often, but you don't always have that. And so necessity has and opportunity and education has bred some powerful women in this sector. It is still, male dominated, and those are the stats, but definitely it's changed. And it's not, I laugh because in the 90s, I took a trust course after I had owned several multifamilies, and there were all men in the room. And one of the men asked me if I was looking for a husband. Right. And so that's like, and now people like, oh, nobody would ever even think that. They wouldn't say that. They would be like, so gauche to say that. But back in the 90s, that was like a thing that women just didn't show up to a real estate conference to learn. There had to be an ulterior motive. And that obviously wasn't me. But so there is definitely a huge shift, and it's growing. Women are becoming more and more involved, which is awesome. And it's more balanced, and like we said, they can decorate the flips better. So anyway, yeah, it's actually a good thing.
That's great, and it's funny that particular story. I remember regaling some of my students with your story about that, and that meetup. Just before we finish, I love asking all the guests just some advice, and we're going to look at 3 categories of people. Imagine you were giving some advice to, first of all, imagine that someone is like starting out. Maybe they've come from a similar background. They're very young, and they're just wondering what would be the biggest piece of advice you could give someone who's either in their teens or early 20s, and they haven't had, let's say, a silver spoon in their mouth when they were growing up.
I say use the pain for fuel. So Michael Beckwith, from Agape Ministry says that the pain will push you until the vision pulls you. Right? So use the pain to push you out of your circumstances. You don't have to accept your circumstances, whatever the pain is, whatever the source of it. If it's financial, if it's emotional, whatever it is. There's so much out there right now. There's so much. So, go on to YouTube, learn. Decide what you want based on learning. So the more you're out there in the world learning about opportunities, the more you're going to get ideas, and the ideas will help to form you. So, I would say just get a lot of ideas and then follow your intuition as to what is best suited for your natural talents, gifts, and abilities, and go in that direction.
I wondered if we just shifted to like someone now who maybe they've heard of this idea of investing. They know the word investing, there's some positive connotations, but they don't know where to get started. on the road to building even a comfortable lifestyle. That sort of second person, what kind of advice would you give to someone just starting out investing, like they, if you had to start out all over again with the investment?
Well, the way I started out in the 90s is different now because the interest rates were really high. My first house was 15.5% with 2 points, and today they're like outrageous at 6.5%, 7%. However, now the prices are really high in many, many, many areas, right? So today it's a little bit different. I think if I was starting out today, I would start out definitely you no matter when you start, you have to start by educating yourself, right? So podcasts like this one, like, reading bigger pockets, just start learning. But also there's a lot of meetups around, REI meetups. Go to the meetups. But be careful because that's where sharks swim in the meetups. The freebie $20 in, right? Sometimes the speakers can be, sharks, or incompetent, or I've seen my friends get burned by some of the speakers with these REI. But you can learn things. So I would say, and then you can network. You can start getting together with people. Educate based on your market, right? Decide where you want to invest, and I would say would be like the secret sauce. If you have any money saved up, invest in somebody with a phenomenal track record. Once you learn which direction you want to go. Do you want to go to fix and flips? Do you want to buy and hold? Do you want to go commercial, note buying? Right. Find out who you can trust in that arena, and they're out there. Okay, but you may not need to see references, talk to people, right? Find out who you can trust in this arena, and then once you do, invest with them. Because once you invest with them, they'll start talking to you because now you're contributing to them. And I would say start by doing that as soon as you can. So I think that's probably the best advice.
So it sounds like educate yourself. The money is worth it. So that the cheap meetups not so good. If you put like your skin in the game, you go to the more expensive meetups, etc. Like, because that's kind of, you're paying for the privilege, and you're paying for the value. But also, I guess, kind of partnering and putting your money where your mouth is, and then they kind of do give you your time. It's like you're almost buying yourself into the room, so to speak. So I guess the final group of advice would be: imagine now someone who might be, they're trying to leap forward into maybe commercial business, but they're afraid to go into commercial investments. Maybe they have seen some examples before, but they're like, all right, well, you could just continue doing a quantity, or you could, as you say, like do one or two bigger ones where they really accelerate your path to retirement. So what advice would you give to someone that's just sort of thinking about going into commercial? What would be some of the best advice for someone like that?
Same advice: educate. Right. Talk to people who are already successful, but the challenge is most people who are successful are busy and they're not interested in teaching you, right? Because why should they teach their competition? And so I recommend J. Scott Shield's The Commercial Academy. I just recommend it because Scott overcame that challenge back in 2001 when he was at a Tony Robbins event during 9/11. When 9/11 happened, he was at a Tony Robbins event in Hawaii, and Tony had to deal with that. There's a phenomenal recording about how Tony dealt with that. It's just crazy. But he was stranded there in Hawaii for 2 weeks, and he decided to start the Commercial Academy. And one of the things he struggled with is, am I teaching my competition? And he overcame that and started sharing secrets and then creating a culture. So right now, it's growing. I think maybe a little too much. I don't know. Who knows? But when it grows too much, it can get watered down, right? But right now, as we speak here, there's some great people who are willing to teach you, and they're willing to be there. We have a call every week. And I literally can pick up the phone and talk to these people, almost any of them, who have tremendous seasoning. And the benefit for them is that if I find a deal, they can get in on it too. They might be my backer. they're definitely going to be somebody who's challenging me to think about it, to analyze it. They could be protecting me, like this happened this week, right? Someone protected me from, getting involved with something, which is so exciting. And then if you provide value for them, then you become somebody they want to talk to, because people of success love to mentor. It's just at a certain level, right? In the beginning, there's a lot of ego when people are successful. That the nouveau riche always have the ego, but at a certain point, it's strong in the culture of the commercial academy right now. The culture is about helping each other, and it's about working together, because it's like, there's shark. These are shark infested waters. It is what it is. You guys need each other, protect each other, help each other. And I have high recommend, and that's not cheap. I'm just telling you straight up. You're going to invest, but whatever. If that's what you want to do, and this isn't the only group, but this is for commercial. I think this is a really good one.
So you have to provide value somewhere. But I guess, Ginger, again, thank you so much for being my guest today. I just wondered, where could people reach out to you if they want to contact you, maybe become a client or just find out more information?
I'm on social media fairly regularly, so hopefully this podcast will end up on my YouTube channel. I've got over 160 videos on various aspects of real estate, based on my experience. And then I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Facebook shut down my business account arbitrarily, so I don't have that anymore. It's up and running, but my last post was last year. And then I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty much out there. So Ginger Crystal Faith. I think I'm the only Ginger Crystal Faith real estate person around, so I'm pretty easy to find.
Great. Well, it'll be in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. So there you have it, folks. Whether it's residential or commercial, real estate remains a great asset class to invest in for the long run. And if you found this beneficial, please consider subscribing if you have not already, and do share with people you know, so that this free personal finance and investing information can help as wide an audience as possible, which of course is the goal of my channel, so that we can all achieve our personal, financial, and investing visions, so that we can all become the investing professor.